You know that feeling. You are standing in front of someone. They ask you a question in English, simple words, words you have studied, words you have heard before, and then nothing. Your mouth opens, your mind goes blank. The sentence you were forming 1 second ago has disappeared completely. Your heart beats faster. Your hands feel cold, and the silence grows longer and longer, like a wall between you and the other person. You want to speak. You really do. But something inside you says no. If you have felt this, I want you to know something before we go any further. You are not alone. This feeling has a name. It visits millions of people every single day. People who are smart, people who study hard, people who know the grammar rules, people who can write beautiful English sentences in their notebook at home, but freeze completely when a real human being is standing in front of them. This is not a story about talent. This is not a story about intelligence. This is a story about fear and what fear does to us when we try to speak a language that is not our first. My name is not important. What matters is this: today I want to sit with you and talk about the real reason you feel afraid, not the reason your teacher told you, not the reason your textbook suggests, the real one. The one that lives deep in your chest, the one that makes you go quiet in meetings, the one that makes you rehearse a simple sentence 10 times before you say it out loud. And more than that, I want to share 4 mindset shifts, 4 ways of seeing things differently, 4 small changes in how you think that can slowly and gently begin to move that wall. This is a lesson for English learners who want more than vocabulary and grammar. This is for the part of you that simply wants to open your mouth and feel free. So take a slow breath, get comfortable, and let us begin. Lesson 1: the brain is not broken. Let me tell you about a girl named Lynn. Lynn was one of the best students in her class, mathematics, literature, science. She understood everything quickly. She worked hard. Her Vietnamese was beautiful. She could explain complicated ideas with ease, make her friends laugh, comfort people when they were sad. With words in her own language, she was alive. But in English class, something strange happened. The moment her teacher asked a question in English, Lynn felt it: a tightening in her chest, a sudden emptiness in her mind. Words she had studied the night before simply vanished. She could see the page in her notebook. She could almost read the sentence she had written. But when she opened her mouth, nothing came. Her classmates were not cruel. Her teacher was not unkind. But once early in the school year, she had tried to answer a question and mispronounced a word. A few students smiled. Just a small moment, just a few seconds. But her brain remembered. From that day forward, her brain made a decision without asking her permission. English class is dangerous. Stay quiet. Stay safe. This is not a story about intelligence. Lynn was intelligent. This is not a story about effort. Lynn worked harder than most. This is a story about what happens inside the brain when it believes it is under threat. There is a simple idea in the study of language learning. When we feel anxious, when we feel watched, when we feel that a mistake will cost us something, our brain raises a kind of invisible wall. It does not do this to hurt us. It does this to protect us. The brain is always trying to protect us. But here's the problem. The brain cannot tell the difference between real danger and social danger. It cannot tell the difference between a tiger in the forest and a classmate who smiled at your pronunciation. To the brain, both feel the same. Both feel like a threat. And so the wall goes up and the words disappear. This is why you sometimes forget a word you absolutely know. This is why you can write a perfect email, at home alone calm, but cannot say a simple sentence when someone is looking at you. It is not because your English is bad. It is because your brain is doing its job. It is protecting you from a danger that is not really there. So here is the first shift. Stop asking what is wrong with me. Start asking what is my brain trying to protect me from. Because when you understand that the fear is not evidence of failure, when you understand that it is simply your brain being a little too careful, something begins to change. You stop fighting yourself. You stop feeling ashamed. You start to see the fear as a signal, not a sentence. Lynn eventually understood this. Not all at once, but slowly she began to see her silence differently, not as proof that she could not speak English, as proof that her brain cared deeply about how others saw her. That caring is not weakness. That caring is very human. And the moment you stop punishing yourself for feeling afraid, the wall begins just slightly to come down. Lesson 2. The audience in your head. I want you to think about the last time you were in a coffee shop. Maybe you ordered something simple, a coffee, a juice, a sandwich, and maybe just for a moment you hesitated because the person behind the counter was going to hear your English and you were not sure if your sentence was correct. You were not sure if your pronunciation was right. You were not sure how they would react. So let me tell you what actually happens in that moment. The person behind the counter is thinking about the next order. They are thinking about the milk they need to heat. They are thinking about the customer after you. They are tired. They have heard hundreds of orders today. They are not sitting there with a notebook ready to write down every mistake you make. When you open your mouth and say in imperfect English, "Can I have one coffee, please, hot with a little milk?" They hear one thing, one coffee, hot, little milk. That is all. They smile, they nod, they make your drink, and you walk away convinced that they secretly judged you when in reality they have already forgotten you and moved on to the next person. Here is something important to understand. When you are afraid to speak, you imagine an audience, a critical, watching, remembering audience. an audience that notices every wrong word, every missing article, every strange pronunciation. An audience that will talk about your mistakes later, will laugh about them, will remember them for years. But that audience does not exist. It lives only in your head. Most people who listen to you speak English in daily life are using almost all of their attention just to understand you. They are not grading you. They are not comparing you to a textbook. They are simply trying to follow what you are saying so they can respond. That is the entire job of a listener, to understand, not to judge. And here is something that might surprise you. Many native speakers, when they hear someone speaking their language as a second language, feel something close to admiration, not contempt, not amusement, admiration, because they know, most of them, how difficult it is to speak in a language that is not your own. They have tried, they have felt the fear themselves, and they respect the courage it takes to open your mouth anyway. The barista does not remember your grammar. The colleague in the meeting does not replay your accent at home. The stranger who asked you for directions has already turned the corner and forgotten everything except where you pointed. What people remember almost always is the feeling. Did this person try to connect with me? Did they look at me with warmth? Did they make an effort? Yes, you made an effort. That is what they remember. So here is the second shift. The audience you are afraid of is not outside you. It is inside you. And that means you are the one with the power to change it. You cannot control what other people think, but you can begin to notice the voice in your head that creates this imaginary jury, this invisible crowd of critics, and ask yourself quietly, is this real? Or is this just fear pretending to be a fact? Because most of the time it is fear. And fear, as we are learning today, is not always telling you the truth. Lesson 3, the bridge, not the trophy. I want you to imagine a bridge, not a beautiful bridge, not the kind you see in photographs with elegant curves and lights reflecting in the water below. Just a simple bridge, wooden planks, old rope, maybe a little uneven, maybe it creaks when you step on it, but it connects two sides of a river. And because of that bridge, people can cross. They can reach each other. They can trade, share, talk, help. The bridge does its job completely, not because it is perfect, because it holds. Language is a bridge, not a trophy, not a performance, not a test you need to pass before you are allowed to be heard. A bridge. And the only question a bridge needs to answer is this one: does it connect? This is where many of us go wrong. Somewhere in our education, somewhere in the years of tests and grades and red marks on paper, we learned to think of language as something we perform, something we are judged on, something that reveals how smart we are, how educated we are, how worthy we are of respect. And that belief is exhausting. It is also wrong. Think about a child learning to walk. She stands up. She takes one step. She falls. She does not sit on the floor and think, I am a failure. I will wait until I am better at this before I try again. She does not feel shame. She does not compare herself to the adults walking around her and decide she is not ready. She simply stands up again because walking is not a performance. It is a tool. It gets her where she wants to go. And every fall is just part of the process of learning to use that tool. Speaking English is the same. Every mispronunciation is just part of learning to use the tool. There is a man whose name you know, Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison. During those years, he did something that many people do not know about. He studied Afrikaans, the language of his captors, the language of the people who had taken his freedom. He studied it not because it was beautiful to him. He studied it because he wanted to understand. He wanted to build a bridge even across that terrible distance, even inside those walls. His Afrikaans was not perfect. It did not need to be. It only needed to reach. And it did. The most important conversations of his life, the negotiations that eventually changed his country, happened through that bridge. Not because his language was flawless, because his intention was clear, because he was trying to connect, not to impress. You do not need to impress anyone. You need to connect. And here's the truth about connection. The other person can feel your intention before they process your grammar. They feel whether you are trying. They feel whether you want to reach them. And that feeling, that warmth, that effort does more for a conversation than a perfect sentence ever could. So here is the third shift. Let go of the trophy. Pick up the bridge. Your English does not need to be beautiful. It does not need to be flawless. It does not need to sound like a textbook or a television presenter or a native speaker who has never known what it feels like to search for a word in another language. It needs to be yours, and it needs to reach. That is enough. That has always been enough. Lesson 4. The muscle that needs to move. There was a woman named Maria. She had come to a new country, alone with 2 suitcases and a small amount of money and a heart full of hope. She found a job at a grocery store, standing behind a counter, scanning items, giving change. Every day for 3 years, she stood at that counter. And every day, customers spoke to her in English. She understood most of what they said. Her listening had grown strong from years of watching television late at night, from listening carefully to conversations around her, from reading the labels on every product that passed through her hands. But she never spoke back. Not really. A nod, a small smile, the total amount on the screen. That was enough, she told herself. That was safe. Because speaking meant risking. Speaking meant someone might not understand her. Speaking meant her accent would show her hesitation, would show the gap between the English in her head and the English in her mouth would show. And she was not ready for that. She was never quite ready. 3 years passed. One quiet afternoon, a small boy came to her counter with his mother. He was maybe 5 years old, with serious eyes and a paper bag of strawberries in his arms. While his mother looked for her wallet, the boy looked up at Maria and asked in a completely natural voice, "Do you like strawberries?" Maria looked at him, and something moved inside her. Not a decision exactly, more like a door opening on its own. "Yes," she said, "very much." 3 words, spoken softly with an accent, with a slight pause before the last two. Imperfect in every technical way. The boy smiled. "Me too," he said. And that was the end of the conversation. But it was not the end of the story. Because that evening, Maria noticed something. Her chest felt lighter. Not because those 3 words had been impressive, not because she had proved anything to anyone, but because she had used her voice, and the world had not ended. The boy had smiled. Life had continued. She spoke a little more the next day, and a little more after that. This is the truth about fear and language that no textbook will teach you. You cannot think your way out of this fear. You cannot read your way out. You cannot study your way out, not completely, not fully. At some point, the only way forward is through. You have to use the muscle. A muscle that never moves grows weak. Not because it is a bad muscle, not because something is wrong with it, simply because muscles need movement to stay alive, to grow, to become strong. Your speaking voice is exactly the same. Every conversation you avoid because you are not ready, that is one less movement, one less chance for the muscle to remember what it can do, one less moment where your brain learns the truth that speaking English does not kill you. That mistakes do not end friendships, that imperfect words offered with sincerity are received with more warmth than you ever imagined. You do not need to be ready. Ready is a feeling that comes after you begin, not before. The woman who has studied for 2 more years but never spoken is further from fluency than the person who speaks badly every single day. Because fluency is not stored in notebooks. It lives in the mouth, in the breath, in the small, brave moment when you decide that connection matters more than comfort. So here is the 4th shift. Stop waiting to be ready. Start being willing. Willing to sound imperfect. Willing to search for a word in the middle of a sentence. Willing to laugh gently at yourself when you say the wrong thing, and then try once more, slightly better, slightly closer. Maria still works at that grocery store, but now she talks to almost every customer. Her English is not perfect. It probably never will be, but it is hers, and it moves, and it reaches people. That is what a muscle does when you finally let it work. It reaches. We have come a long way together today. We talked about Lynn, who was smart and hardworking, and still went silent when someone looked at her and waited. We talked about the brain and how it raises a wall, not to punish you, but to protect you, and how that wall, once you understand it, begins to lose some of its power. We talked about the audience in your head, the one that is far more critical than any real person standing in front of you has ever been. The one that replays your mistakes long after everyone else has forgotten them. We talked about the bridge, how language is not a trophy to win or a test to pass, how it only needs to reach, how your imperfect searching, sometimes stumbling English can carry more warmth and meaning than a perfect sentence spoken without heart. And we talked about Maria and the boy and the strawberries and what happens when a muscle finally moves after standing still for too long. 4 shifts, 4 ways of seeing, not because fear disappears overnight, it does not, but because each small shift loosens something. Each new way of seeing creates a little more space, a little more breath, a little more room for your voice to exist. You are not afraid of English. You are afraid of being seen while you are still becoming. And I want to tell you something true, that becoming, that honest, imperfect, courageous becoming, is the most beautiful thing to witness in any language. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep letting your English grow alongside your courage. I will see you in the next lesson. Goodbye for now.